Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this invite-only pitch session with Gabriel Renee from Versus. Thanks, Mom. So I want to talk to you today about the importance of each era of computing and how these eras define all of the other technologies associated with them. So for the last 4 generations of computing technologies, as we've moved from the sort of corporate computing structure into personal computing, really Web 1.0 as the network there, connected by HTTP, the mobile era, Web 2.0, and the oncoming era, which is spatial. What you'll notice is that each level, there's actually 3 tiers. This is functioning as a type of global computer stack. Fundamentally, there's a data tier, a logic tier, and an interface tier. And you'll see that in each case, we actually evolve in very predictable ways. At the bottom, the data layer becomes more trustable and more decentralized, more distributed. So today, we're going to be moving from cloud technologies to blockchain as a data layer, mesh, edge networks, fog networks, the ability to basically push out distribution of compute into the world itself. Our shoes, our purses, our devices, our cars. At the next level, the logic level, we really move from programs to applications to now smarter technologies like smart contracts and even artificial intelligence. So the trend here is really that the logic layer becomes smarter and more self-executing, autonomous. And the interface tier actually just becomes more natural. In the beginning, we're trying to interface with these technologies, and we're talking to them in computer language. Now they're talking back to us in our own language. So 3-dimensional interfacing, augmented and virtual reality, voice recognition, gesture, see, say, talk, think, feel. These are the new interfaces. And the IoT itself will be embedded all around us, but actually spatial computing will be the interface to this. So we really see that this new era of computing is going to be defined by spatial computing. And market trend number 2 is that actually we are already in the spatial computing era, kind of like Web 2.5. When we first were walking around carrying our PCs, there was no GPS. There was no way to actually identify location. But we've actually kind of moved into the sort of 2.5 era of the web, where actually the largest unicorns, Airbnb, Uber, Snap, even Pokemon, are spatially centric. Now, you might be interfacing with a 2D screen, but you're essentially looking at a digital twin of a home, and then you're getting spatial permissions to occupy that home for a period of time. Same thing with Uber, but with the car. With Snap, you actually have digital characters overlays. Hundreds of millions of people, mostly women, smarter than most of us here, are interfacing as digital characters, accentuating and augmenting themselves. Pokemon, billion users, $1 billion year 1. A fluke or a sign of things to come? The question is, what's next? The really important trend here is that we're moving from the digitization of information and processes to the digitization of everything. It's not just the Internet of Things or the Internet of non-things that some of my VR friends like to say, or the Internet of Intelligence, right? Or the Internet of Value. It's the Internet of everything. And in this era, everything gets digitized and connected. People, places, things, money. But what's the problem? Well, the problem is our fundamental network protocols, not blockchain protocols, web-based protocols, are not designed to enable a level of trust. How do you trust who, what, when, where, and how people can interact and transact and transport spatial information, spatial content? Problem number 2, the network problem. How do you network all these things together? How do you move between virtual worlds? How do you move objects between the virtual world and real world? How do you program a smart city so that autonomous vehicles have flight paths or no-fly zones? What is the fundamental networking thing that connects physical things and digital things together with money, with value? How do you connect the blockchain to AI, to AR, and IoT? So here's the answer. You're all familiar with smart stuff. Smart money, as an example. Smart contracts. Programmable permission, self-automated rules for a transaction. How about smart assets? Any CryptoKitties owners in here? Good. It's embarrassing. No, honestly, though, this was a a way of looking at value inside of an object. The whole security token market is about smart assets, but everything occurs in space. So the idea of secure and trusted programmable space for the Internet of Things, where AR is the interface, where VR can be interconnected into a network, and smart cities can be operated together. Imagine smart spaces, smart factories, smart homes, smart retail, smart cities interconnected. Well, Versus is that interconnecting protocol that enables smart spaces. This is the basis of a new kind of web. So what is the unique value? If we boil it down, we're really talking about automated spatial transactions. So the benefit here is that Versus has invented a way to create a digital twin of any person, place, or thing. Link those together, and when an object or a person moves in or out of any space in the real world or in a virtual domain, based on permissions, trigger a transaction. This is the Amazon goification of everything, but not by Amazon. Or you can think of it as the Pokemon goification of the world, but transactional. So now you've got 4 things: provenance, persistence, permissions, and payments integrated into one solution where you've got proof of identity for people, places, things, spaces, a spatial DNS, spatial domain model like the web today. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, but we're going into a new dimension, quite literally. Persistence. How do you get augmented reality content that functions as the parking place that our friend from Tesla was just talking about? How do you search digital content in the real world? It has to be built into some sort of index that we can all access based on permissions and probably secured by blockchains and other types of trust nodes at the bottom. Obviously, permissions. How do you set the rules for these interactions and transactions? And then automated payments that actually let payments be triggered as people move in and out of the world. Think of single sign-on for the planet. So where are we starting? We're starting in a really simple place. Amazon started with books. We are starting with boxes. So we start with the smart supply chain, basically the nervous system of the planet. $11 trillion market, by the way, so it's no small thing. What we've done in just the last few weeks as we transition from an ICO-centric raise to an STO, where we need to really build a genuine business model and customers, we found a customer, NRI here in Los Angeles, million square feet, 100 million products a year go out of there, Amazon Prime member. They have a problem where every 6 months, their most senior people walk out the door. So no one ever learns the map, the spatial layout of this place, right? High turnover. We did a one-to-one test where we set up in 2 minutes our spatial solution. As you can see, information, what is in this box? Where is it supposed to go? Who gets to access it? When does it need to go? All set up. We did side-by-side comparison. If you're interested, we'll be happy to show you. They walked around with their phone. The guy, one of the owners, has been doing it for 20 years. 200% increase in productivity. We start talking about multi-trillion-dollar marketplaces, and you extrapolate that into shipping and other supply chain, even manufacturing. You can start to see where our boxes become this sort of Amazon books of the future. So that's our first case study. The fundamental principle here is that this is built on a set of spatial standards. A spatial index, this is where you have one single verifiable data source protected by permissions for people, places, and things, and all the interaction transactional history. Second, you've got spatial contracts, like smart contracts for space, and a spatial protocol like HTTP, but we call HSTP, Hyperspace Transfer Protocol, that actually connects the interface through the logic layer, through the data layer, and back. And finally, a spatial browser that we're working with the head of WebXR from Mozilla to have one single interface that allow all devices to work not in a little siloed world of the island of apps, but a new kind of web. Second, we're building a platform on top of this for very large clients that we're already in discussions with as an enterprise platform layer for spatial operations management. Sort of like what we just saw with the boxes and the supply chain, but now this can be applied from everything from smart retail to smart cities. And we're actually in those conversations now because large companies are recognizing digital transformation is becoming spatial, and trust is the data layer, but the interface is what ends up ruling here. Excuse me. So we've also, in the last 3 months, built out an ecosystem of 30 signed partners. These are partners that can help facilitate delivering on these sort of spatial operations pipeline management services in each of these categories. So we've got partners in the 3D mapping, robotics, beacons and sensors, IoT, encryption, obviously blockchain, distributed compute and storage, edge network, fog network, and then spatial browser interfaces from the enterprise to the consumer side. This is in the span of 3 months. Why are these people signing up with us? Because they see what we see, but we can't build it alone. We have to build this together. We believe this is the basis for the new web, and so do these guys. So we talked about NRI. That's our first test. They're looking at a 7-figure contract with us. They told us that if we could save 30% rather than the 200% we showed in that little case study, that's worth $1 million a year in savings to them. Just got back from Tokyo, NEC, SoftBank, Shiseido, talking with us about taking 7-Elevens, of which NEC controls all the 7-Elevens throughout Asia, point of sale and facial recognition. How do we basically do our own version of Amazon Go without having to pay Amazon? Ask to invest. Talking to them later today. SoftBank, you all know, largest portfolio of emerging tech. Spoke with their innovation team. We think Versus could be the nervous system for our future roadmap, even for what we're doing with the Vision Fund, currently largest fund in the world. Got off the phone with Esri last night, largest mapping company in the world. Pretty much all the mapping data that you get is these guys. They're already testing our code. They're going to come back to us next week. And this isn't code that's built in some sort of obscure, wizard blockchain Hogwarts type thing. This is, you can write this in JavaScript. Right? We use blockchain as a service to back this up. We believe blockchain as a service is what IBM and Cisco and others are starting to make available, where blockchain programmers are not how this thing scales. It's all the other programmers in the world, so we've designed it with that in mind. We're having deep discussions with Magic Leap, sort of the darling of the ball in spatial computing. If you know who they are, you know why that's important. And we're really extremely excited about this. This is month 1. Just got off the phone with a 12-year Accenture analyst. I had $1 billion on there for year 5. He told me that based on a couple government projects alone, that we were too low. So I won't try to justify it, but if you'd like to talk about it, be happy to share. So what is this really about? I've showed you how we can make money along the path to the spatial web. Not the World Wide Web, not a web made of pages, right? But a whole new kind of web. This is the big market potential. This is a spatial web with its own economy because it's tokenized. HTTP, the current web, how valuable is the current web to us? Trillions of dollars worth of value? Certainly trillions of dollars of value is created on top of it, but none of that goes into the network itself. We've designed HSTP as a tokenized protocol. Right? So what happens now? That means you actually get to build a spatial web that's not just a web of pages and text and media in 2 dimensions, but a 3-dimensional web in the real world. A web of people, places, things, and money. And Peter Diamandis, who's the head of XPRIZE, who's also on our board, said, in the same way that trillions of dollars was built on the current web, he believes, as one of the top futurists in the world, whose partner is the head of the Google Brain project, that Versus will enable far more. Why? Because not only the real world gets digitized and networked, but all the virtual worlds that will emerge now. In 1993, we had 23 websites. There's 1 billion websites now. Can you imagine what happens over the next 30 years? So that's the big prize. We get all that done within a year. We're in pilot phase right now. We'll have an alpha out by Q1. Our SDK will be available in about a month for private testing. And by the end of next year, we expect to make this global and launch our new Versus Foundation, which will act as a nonprofit, will actually be the point for advocacy, awareness, and adoption of this new protocol. So we're ready for market. The code is working. We've got 250,000 lines of code. We've got proof of concepts working across AR, VR, on blockchain, off blockchain, 30 signed partnerships, 5 proof of concepts with 5 multi-billion-dollar companies, a huge ecosystem of partners, and about 50 articles that came out in the last 2 months. And the world is starting to take notice. But this is not something that we can do alone. This is something we need help with. So if this vision catches you, like it's caught many of us, some of our partners that are already committed to us, it's because of this two-token structure. A utility token at the nonprofit foundation level that secures and protects these protocols for all time. And Versus Labs, which is acting as the commercialization engine to help spurn on adoption and get paid for it. Here's a team of guys that paid a very expensive cameraman. And here's our advisors. Jay Sammet, independent vice chairman of Deloitte. Peter Diamandis, founder of XPRIZE and Singularity University. Denzel Fagelson, who's the founder of iTunes, special advisor to Apple on their content strategy. Hashtag spatial content coming. Dr. Tom Furness is the inventor of virtual and augmented reality at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It originally started as technologies for flight simulation. Our amazing friends over at Blockchain Industries, Patrick Moynihan and Paul Kim. We've got Chris Colo and Lauren Seelig. These are amazing people from both IMAX and the Global Executive Director of the VR AR Association. Tony Parisi, the head of Unity, VR AR at Unity. Anselm Hook, who's the head of WebXR at Mozilla. Huge AI pioneer, Mark Meadows, and most recently, John Havens, the Executive Director, who's working on the global standards for the ethics for autonomous and intelligent systems. So why are all these people bought in? Because these are the folks that know better. And we're very lucky to have them. We're raising a little bit of money. This is what that structure looks like. The first half is mostly already filled by strategics that are in line. And a bunch of other information, but I just wanted to thank you guys for coming. We're really excited about this. I think that a lot of companies are going through a transition right now where they're transitioning from the extra ridiculous exuberance of raising $100 million in an ICO. And now what we really need is founders who have backgrounds in building, in traditional fundraising, in commercial markets. I've been working with these guys off and on for 25 years. This is not a fly-by-night team. We did not come here for the ICO rush. We came here to build. And one way or another, we think it's important enough to remain committed to that. So if you'd like to be a part of it, we need all the help we can get. We appreciate your time. I'm Gabriel Renee from Versus. Thanks.